Disagreed to, and I give the call to the member for Jaga Jaga.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Child sex abuse survivors deserve better from the Morrison Government. This bill goes some way to improving the National Redress Scheme, but it is in no way enough. It is almost a decade since the announcement of the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse, and survivors are getting older and many are still waiting for redress, and some are tragically dying and missing out altogether. The Royal Commission estimated 60,000 survivors would be eligible for redress. As at 26th of March this year, the scheme had received just over 10,000 applications, finalised 5,266, including 5,218 payments. It's processing 3,622 applications and 765 applications are on hold. That is a massive gap between those estimated to be eligible and those who have so far received a payment. And the slow rate of both payments and applications indicates that the scheme is difficult to navigate, it's inadequate in its current form, and it's hard for survivors to find. Survivors have spoken of this difficulty of preparing an application. And in a Senate estimates hearing last year, we heard that the average processing time of claims is between 12 and 13 months. And these difficulties are, of course, even harder for First Nations people, for people from CALD backgrounds, and for people with disability. And so while it's positive that this bill is coming forward and making some improvements to the scheme, and so this bill shouldn't be held up, we can't pretend that it will make the changes that the redress scheme needs. Deputy Speaker, the Royal Commission into Institutional Child Sex Abuse uncovered some of the worst abuses and the worst failings of government and institutions in our nation's history. For too long, we looked the other way. We allowed the cover-ups. For too long, we allowed power imbalances to mean that children were abused and then silenced. The consequences for those children, some of whom did not get to grow into being adults, have been horrific. Consequences for their families and for their communities have been horrific. And so, in the wake of the landmark Royal Commission, it would seem urgent that we do all we can to make what reparations we can. Of course, we can never fully undo the hurt and the damage that came from this massive abuse of trust. But we can make it so much easier for victims to get the redress that they deserve. And that means that the Morrison Government should stop dragging its feet and urgently and comprehensively address the major challenges that there still exist within the National Redress Scheme. The scheme that was ultimately rolled out by the government did not fully realise the recommendations of the Royal Commission. Labor proposed amendments to the scheme in February to align with the Royal Commission's recommendations, but the government voted them down. And survivors have been clear from the outset. Since the Royal Commission, they have highlighted the following: that they are missing out on redress. There's an ongoing lack of survivor trauma focus and ongoing counselling and support. And survivors are seeing their payments chipped away by a low cap, indexation of prior payments, as well as an arbitrary assessment framework. The government's amendments to the scheme fall short of what survivors have asked and what Labor has proposed. The whole point of the Royal Commission was to listen to survivors, and yet the Morrison Government is still not hearing them. Deputy Speaker, the National Redress Scheme for Institutional Child Sexual Abuse Amendment Bill 2021 seeks to establish an advance payment scheme for older, ill or vulnerable applicants. The advance payment scheme will provide $10,000 to older, terminally ill or vulnerable people. The advance payment will be deducted from a person's final redress payment. Labor has been calling for an advance payment scheme for some time now, and we do support this change. People have waited too long for the support they should have. This bill will also seek to reduce the timeframe over which prior payments are indexed before being deducted from a redress payment. Indexation will now cease when an application for redress is made, not at the time of a decision on a redress application is finalised. Again, this change is not good enough. There's been an ongoing criticism for survivors, and Labor is calling for the indexation of prior payments to cease completely, as well as ensuring that unrelated payments are not deducted. There's no need for this government to be so mean-spirited about this. This bill will also introduce changes to allow the Department of Social Services to extend the time a person has to accept an offer of redress beyond the current 6-month limit. This is significant as a person can only apply for redress once, and if an offer is not accepted within the allowed time, it's taken to be refused. The bill will remove the requirement for applications to include a statutory declaration, as this can be a traumatic experience for survivors. The bill will also allow redress payments to be made in instalments if requested by the applicant. As I said, these are welcome changes, but there is still too much that is unaddressed and that has been unaddressed for far too long. We know that survivors have asked for so much more and that the second anniversary review of the scheme recommended more. So we have both the voices of survivors and we have a comprehensive review saying that what the government is putting forward today is not enough. And so further changes must be made, and they must include things such as a face-to-face application process for First Nations, CALD and disability communities, lifelong access to counselling for all survivors, improving the quality, the scope and the geographic spread of support services, including financial counselling, developing a survivor improvement charter to set expectations around privacy service standards, reviewing the limit of one application so that changes in circumstances and additional information can be taken into account. Deputy Speaker, this is naming just a few of the things that review found and that survivors have asked for. It is too important for us to wait to get this right. As I said earlier, unfortunately, some survivors are dying before they get to be part of the redress scheme, before they get to be acknowledged for the hurt, for the neglect that they suffered. I do urge the government to do better urgently to support survivors. Deputy Speaker, in talking today, I want to pay tribute to all of the survivors, to their families and to their communities. You should never have experienced what happened to you. I acknowledge all of those who told their stories to the Royal Commission, and I acknowledge all of those who were not able to. I thank the tireless and the fierce advocates, the people such as Leonie Sheedy of Clan, who have worked so hard to push successive governments to do so much better. Those are the people that we here in this place must be listening to. Those are the people that the Morrison Government must listen to. We all owe these people a debt. They were failed by institutions. They were failed by this place. It is on all of us to make sure that the redress, the reparations that they get now live up to their expectations and live up to what's been recommended in the review of this scheme. Deputy Speaker, I also want to acknowledge in this speech the work of my colleague, the member for Newcastle, who in her community and in this parliament has been critical to ensuring survivors are heard and pushing for them to get the redress scheme that they deserve. It's a pleasure to be a Labor member with her and to know that there are such fierce advocates on the Labor side for victims of child sexual abuse. Deputy Speaker, it seems like time after time I give speeches in this place about missed opportunities from the Morrison Government, about things that come half done, too late, without enough support for people who desperately need it. This is another one of those occasions. The Morrison Government has missed the opportunity to address major structural issues in the National Redress Scheme. They should implement all the recommendations of the second-year review of the National Redress Scheme and, most importantly, lift the maximum redress payment to $200,000. Survivors have been through so much. They need to be able to count on this redress scheme. We must get it right. We must not add to the trauma. We must help the healing. Thank you.